Hello, everyone. Well, I'm going to talk about capitalism a little bit because it's important to know what we're up against and have a clear picture of what we're up against. And it'd be good to get into the real nuts and bolts of capitalism and how it functions as an economic system and all of that great stuff. There's going to be two workshops today on precisely that, the ABCs of socialism and communism. And so all of the great stuff that I would like to get into, we will do in those workshops. It's a repeating workshop, so I encourage you to attend that in one of those sessions. But today, in just a short period of time, you can see that we've already heard of a variety of different struggles and a variety of different issues that are affecting our class, from racism and sexism and bigotry and immigrant bashing to endless wars, unemployment and foreclosures and evictions and homelessness and hunger and all of these different things that we fight on an individual basis against. Fighting for homes, fighting for education, fighting against the budget cuts. And of course it's important to be doing that and to be waging these struggles on these individual issues. But of course, it's essential if we really want to solve these problems, if we really want to eradicate these ills from society, we have to get to the root of it and what the cause of all of it is. And there is a root to all of it. It lies at the very base of society, its foundation, which is how production is organized, how things are produced, how goods and services come into being, and who owns them, and who owns the wealth of society. Well, the root cause of all social ills in our society, the root cause of all inequality and all hardship, is the capitalist system itself. That economic system where a tiny minority, that 1%, or really the 0.1%, own all of the wealth of society, all of the products of our labor, and rule, through their sham government over the 99% of us. And their goal in production, their goal in organizing society, is nothing other than to maximize profits for themselves. And that is the sole purpose for all production and its drive in society. So that's kind of ridiculous, right? I mean, capitalism, when you really look at it, is just a completely absurd system. It's organized in a way that makes economic crises, like the deep one that we're in now, inevitable, right? I mean, in the scramble for profits of these capitalists competing with each other, trying to make more profits than their competitors, trying to make as much as they can, not even just for that year, but more than the last quarter. In that scramble, they immediately, they inevitably lead to crisis, right? I mean, even the, pro-capitalist economists will talk about that boom and bust cycle in capitalism, right? What does that mean? Is that the economy is destined to bust, is destined to go into crisis. That's built into the system. So skyrocketing unemployment and cuts and layoffs and foreclosures is built into the very system itself, because it's based on a system of all of the wealth being concentrated into a few hands while the vast majority suffer. Well, capitalism is not just an absurd system, but it's a criminal system. It's criminal, I mean, there's many reasons and there's lots to go into, and I can only cover a few. But capitalism is theft, quite plainly, right? The average worker at Walmart makes what? Any guesses? A year?
17,000.
18,000 a year for the average Walmart worker. What does the average Walmart executive make? $18,000 an hour. Right. That's a lot. I mean, that's over $150 million a year, right? So why is there such a disparity there? Is it because the Walmart executive works a lot harder and puts in more hours? Is it because of their own, ingenuity and so forth? Well, no, absolutely not. The opposite, in fact. The billions in profits produced by Walmart are created by those thousands of workers working every single day, making $18,000 a year, right? That wealth is created by them. They receive a tiny fraction in wages, while all of the surplus goes into the pockets of the owners who do absolutely nothing. When we go to work, when Walmart workers go to work, we're creating the wealth that pays our own wage. But not just that, we're also creating the wealth that pays the wage of the capitalist, except their cut is much, much bigger. Collectively, as a working class, we create trillions of dollars a year in wealth, creating the richest country ever in human history. Enough money exists right now to provide every single person with a job, every single person with a free quality education through PhD, provide every single person with a home, every single person with free quality healthcare. That money exists, and it could be used for that. But instead, all of the surplus is spent enriching that class of owners, instead of being spent benefiting the workers who create it or the communities where they come from. All that surplus becomes the private profits of some billionaires. You know, it's a criminal system because it's inhumane, right? I mean, all of us here, I'm sure, are in a bad situation with their job, can't find work, are underemployed, are nervous about losing their job. So we're living in a system now where some multi-millionaire can come up to us and say, I'm going to pay you a poverty wage, make you pay for your own health care, work you horrible hours in a brat-baking job, and lay you off if I feel like it, and we're happy to get that job. Right? Isn't that ridiculous? I mean, we're happy about it because it's a job, right? There are, right now, 40 million people in the United States who are out of work. 40 million people. Right? Are there 40 million people out of work because there's 40 million lazy people who don't want to work? No. There are 40 million unemployed people because the jobs do not exist. Because capitalism cannot create those jobs, or they can, but they choose not to, and they lay them off to protect their profits. And they can create jobs. In fact, they were given $11 trillion in our tax money against our will to create jobs, and then they still laid off tens of thousands of workers and gave themselves multi-million-dollar bonus checks. Right? That's a crime. And if the jobs don't exist, and you can't find a job, this system will take everything away from you and throw you out onto the street. It's a system that sucks the life out of you. Right? I mean, how many people themselves or know someone that works multiple jobs or works over 80 hours a week just to put food on their table? Right? People who aren't even allowed to enjoy life. You know, parents who never get to see their children. All because they have no choice but to do that or to starve. Literally, so some fat cat can sail the world on his yacht. That's a criminal system. It's criminal because it's a system of massive waste. Right? Consider this. For the first time in human history, right, tens of thousands of years of development of modern humans, right, there is no longer the problem of scarcity, which plagued every previous society in history. In this era of technology, there is an overabundance. Right? As a class, we can grow enough food right now, and we do, to feed every single person. We build enough homes to house every person. We invent and produce enough medicine to treat every sick person, and much, much more. That's an amazing human achievement. Right? It's never happened before. After tens of thousands of years marked and defined by extreme scarcity. But what is done with that abundance under capitalism? Instead of feeding the millions of people in the US alone who are malnourished, the capitalists will burn tons of food to the ground to keep the price of food high. Instead of housing people, the richest banks kick families out of their homes the second the economy tanks. You know, I mean, right now as we speak, there's homes, brand new homes, livable homes that are being bulldozed to the ground. Not because there's no one that wants to live in them, but because the bank cannot sell them. And it's more profitable to reduce it to rubble than to let someone live in it. And there's 1 million homeless school children every single year in the United States while the capitalists kick families onto the street and bulldoze homes, right? That's a crime. You know, how many people, I'm sure everyone knows someone who has needlessly suffered and died in a hospital because they could not afford the treatment. And they couldn't afford the treatment, and all the while, there was medicine that could have treated them that the capitalists let expire in warehouses because they could not sell it. The great, vast, productive wealth of society is thrown away in a cutthroat gambling match between capitalist kingpins, causing nothing but misery for the same exact people who produce those things in the first place. And there's a lot of different things to get into, and one of them it's a crime because it robs the great intellectual and technological capacity of human society, right? How difficult is it for people here, people under capitalism, to get a quality education? How hard is it to study, to learn, to become the master of a field of science, to invent? I mean, you have to go into debt to even want to do any of those things if you can even put yourself through school without having to work so many hours, right? How hard is it for an average worker to be able to study culture and art and literature and to have time to create it? I mean, these things are stifling. How many brilliant chemists can only find work with pharmaceutical giants, making medicines for profit, right, instead of trying to cure diseases? If you're a physicist or an engineer, where are the jobs? They're in the defense industry, not making things that benefit society, but reaching the furthest lengths of the most technologically advanced way of destroying a human body, or destroying a city, or destroying a home, right? And that brings us to really one of the most criminal aspects of capitalism is the mass death and destruction that it causes. I mean, who thinks it's just a coincidence that all of the wars we're told we have to fight, all of our so-called enemies in the world, just happen to be in the most resource-rich countries on the planet that don't allow Wall Street to just come in and run the show? The compulsion under this system to reach super profits chases the capitalists to every corner of the globe, and they will do whatever it takes to get it. In Iraq, we watched over 1 million innocent human beings slaughtered. We watched over 6,000 US soldiers march to their deaths, right? Also, ExxonMobil and Shell could finally suck the oil out of that country. That is a great crime against humanity. This is a system that lets for-profit energy companies shut off the heat of families in the winter. That lets the richest banks and corporations, who are bailed out with our tax dollars, eliminate millions of jobs on a whim, destroying millions of lives. Because under capitalism, the billionaires have the right to protect their portfolios, but a family doesn't have the right to stay warm in the winter. The health insurance company has the right to protect its profits, but if you're sick, you don't have the right to live, you don't have the right to be treated like a human being. This is a criminal system. And all of this because the billionaires say that they run society. Because they say that they own it all. That they must control the products of our labor. But as you can see, the current way that society is organized is an absolute disaster for the 99% of us. It's all based on this economic system that functions to maximize profit and nothing else. And that's why there's no kinder, gentler capitalism, right? Reforms are good, and we want progressive reforms to happen, but any pro-capitalist economist will tell you that all of these social ills we talked about are inevitable, that capitalism cannot exist without unemployment, without foreclosures, without homelessness, without hunger, without inequality, without war. Those things are built into the system, and we want to say that we no longer accept that. That lavish luxury for the few and misery for the masses is unacceptable. It's criminal. That any amount of joblessness and homelessness and lack of education is a crime. That we create the wealth, we should be the ones who control it and use it to enrich and push humanity forward rather than grind it into the ground. You know, the billionaires and their lackeys in Washington want us to accept the cuts, the bailouts, the tuition hikes, the joblessness, all as a permanent reality. And they want us to look to solutions solutions within the system itself. And of course they're going to do this in this upcoming election campaign when all of these promises will be made, in particular by the Democratic Party. But they all want us to look for changes within the system that maintains the dominance of that 1% sitting atop society. Well, we have a very different solution. And in fact, you can even look into the US Declaration of Independence to see our solution, right? And I'm going to quote the Declaration of Independence because it says, "Whenever any form of government becomes destructive, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish it and institute a new government." Capitalism is a criminal, inhumane, parasitic system destroying the lives of millions of people like us for the enrichment of the 1%. Therefore, it is our right to abolish it, to overthrow it, to bury it, and put the people in power so we can build a society in our interests instead of the interests of the fat cats on Wall Street. Thank you.